a former presenter for Hope FM. He's been with Teta FM, VUT. That's some of the radio stations that he worked for in the Val area. We're speaking to Motseki Mabuya, whom SABC Lesedi FM has announced yesterday that he'll be joining their team on the weekend slot. Nada Mabuya, speak to us about this great news. How are you feeling? What were you doing when you heard the news?
What was I doing?
Yes.
Look, I was at work. As we have introduced on your first line, that
Sure.
all I do is radio. So I was at work doing my daily work, which is related to media. So I was just in the office when the news were shared to me. Yeah.
So you had to probably consider packing your bags, or are you still going to work for the same media house?
Well, the radio station that I was the station manager for, and also a talent for with Hope FM. So obviously you cannot be working for two radio platforms, SABC being the PBS and Hope being a community radio. So in this case, yes, I have relinquished my responsibilities at Hope to focus and concentrate and really pay the attention at Lesedi.
Sure. You've been doing this for more than 16 years now, or we can say 16 years. But obviously, Lesedi FM is a different platform than the ones that you've been at. How are you feeling about this news?
Well, it's what one would call a coming of the full cycle. I mean, I have, if I may add, some of the platforms I've been with Radio 2000 as a content contributor. At some stage in my life, I have been at Lesedi as a content contributor as well. At some stage in my life on Skuza Bell's show. I have been at Lesedi as a content contributor again on the news side a couple of years ago. So for me, it's not really the aha moment, but it's just the landing of the appointed date with the future.
Sure. Talk to us about these shows that you'll be doing. According to Lesedi FM, they are saying that you'll be on Meretito, which is on weekend on Saturday. Then you'll also be on Toriso, which is on Sunday. What are they all about?
Well, Meretito, they are both music shows, for lack of a better word. But Meretito mostly focuses on taking us a bit step back, memory lane, where we from musically. I'm sure you'd know. Again, depends when you were born. But
Sure.
if you are from the 80s, 70s, 60s, or between the 80s and the 70s, there's a type of music that South Africans were listening to, and it was not just the music, but it was more of part of their lives, the music that was carrying them through the hard times in South Africa. But also it is a show that will also not be looking into South African music, but a show that also would be spreading its wings across the continent of Africa. So you are expecting to hear sounds from Nigeria, Zambia, Malawi, Congo, Senegal. So do expect not only the sounds from those areas, but also even the very same artists from those countries and the people living in those countries. Something that has never been heard before on the city. I'm sure it's something that is really exciting me to be able to talk to fellow Africans in the continent, but also speaking their languages within a Sotho radio station. How's that? I mean, somebody would say, okay, which language is mostly spoken in Africa? It's Swahili. You and I, we probably speak Sotho in the Free State or in Gauteng, or in Lesotho for that matter, but
Sure.
none of us have learned Swahili, which is one of the most spoken languages in Africa. But it brings an opportunity for Lesedi FM listeners to really enjoy the music while at the same time being educated and trying to get the taste of how other African countries are living. More than anything else, it's a music show that connects Africans through sound.
You're speaking about language, which is also one of the important things, especially when it comes to our African language. But one would assume and also guess that you are Sotho speaking a person. Um, who is Mabuya? Where is he from? Where does he originate? Are you originating in the Val, in Sebokeng, in Fanabale? Where are you coming from?
Unfortunately not, my brother. I'm from Kwakwa, Buiketlo, Namahadi. Ke kene sekolo Buiketlo ka ya Mabela and went to Dikwena for my matric. So ke ngwana Kwakwa, hlahetseng Kwakwa, ya holetseng Kwakwa, mme ke Mosotho ya felletseng. I went to Gauteng like many South Africans who were pursuing their dreams, school, and really pursuing a dream more than anything else. I started in Tembisa when I first landed in Gauteng, fresh from Kwakwa. And that's where I kick-started my radio career at a community radio station they called the Voice of Tembisa. So that's where I broke my virginity. So and then I went to the Val because of school. I joined VUT-FM, went to TET-FM, and later on I joined Hope FM, which subsequently I was honored and fortunate to be the station manager for about 3 years. So Kiwana Kwakwa, unfortunately my work for the past, I think, 10 years, largely, I would say, I've been in the Val, and I think that's where brand Motseki Mabuya really got to rise. That's why, unfortunately, a lot of people, no, so it's something that I think I'm really excited about, that I'll just be taking back up people that, by the way,
Sure.
and yes, Val is my second home, and I cannot divorce myself from the Val. It is an area that has really shaped me as a man I am, a father to my kids, and the guy I am, or rather the broadcaster I am. You know, I mean, when I left home, I was just a boy who just completed his matric, but I was made, honed, and really created by the Val.
You spoke about you being a station manager at the previous radio station that you were working at, which is Hope FM, and I've also looked at your profile and some of the things that you did. We didn't only read about them, but we were told about them. I remember when I joined the first university radio station. There's a gentleman from Sasolburg called Jabulani Khatebe, also known as Bondo. He told
Right.
me about you and YB20, which is some of the things that you did. But I want to put you in a corner to say that do you think that our South African media, especially looking into broadcasting, radio to be specific, is it still doing the best that it was doing before when you started 16 years ago?
You mean radio to be specific?
Yes.
No, it certainly does. I mean, radio evolves. It's one platform that has been able to evolve over time. It remains the influence. It remains the powerhouse. I'm sure 15 years ago, a lot of people were saying radio will be dead in the next 10 or 15 years, and this was then. The same way that you and I may pose that question today and say, do you think radio will still be alive in the next 10 years? Certainly, the radio will still be alive, precisely because traditional and cultural radio remains a very powerful tool of information and education, of course, to a certain extent, that of entertainment. People still rely, not solely anymore on radio, but people still rely for credibility's sake and purpose on radio. And I think that's one thing that I can conclude, Ukuba. Radio remains the same. However, yes, it has changed because 15 years ago, we were all starting to really get used to social media, for an example. 15 years later, you and I cannot really be excited to listen to the breaking news on radio because whoever that is on the bulletins, by the time they get to give us the breaking news, specifically on the bulletin, would have long learned about that particular story. But of course, radio would bring what the breaking story on social media would not be able to do, which is to really dissect and give those who are affected in the story an opportunity or a platform to really give them a right to reply, at least on radio, which again, social media can still do give people a right to reply. But half the time, credibility still remains with radio. So I think radio still remains a source and a force to be reckoned with, I think, across the continent, if not globally today, I think.
Before I let you go, Ntate Mabuya, in the streets of Kwakwa, in the streets of Sebokeng, in the streets of Zamdela, in the streets of Namahadi, in the streets of Klerksdorp, there's a young man who or young woman who wants to be the next Motseki Mabuya, who wants to be the next Nyakaloli Ine, who wants to be the next Skuzabel. What are your encouraging or motivating ways that you would at least share with them about this industry that you're working in?
Whatever your dream is, live in it. Doesn't matter how small it is. Doesn't matter how people look at you when you share the dream with them. It doesn't matter how many times they're going to ridicule your dream. That's your dream. It requires you. And it's your responsibility to believe in it. It's your responsibility to tell people about it. It's your responsibility to make other people believe in a dream. But more than anything else, it's your responsibility to make it happen. It will not happen in your time. It will happen in the appointed time. But the beauty about life and dreams is that once you are given one, nobody can take it away from you. It's just you who are going to let yourself down by not following and believing in your dreams. And I always say, that's what life is about. You've got to fail and understand that failure is part of the process. You have to fail. You've got to be excited that you have failed. You've got to start so that you can fail. You fail, you look at yourself and say, okay, I failed. What do I do? I've got a choice of starting again, or you don't. It's still your choice again. Fella, we don't become failures because we have already failed, but we unfortunately become failures because we had failed to try again when we have failed.
Motseki Mabuya, let me thank you for your time, Dado.
I appreciate my brother.